This is The Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us. Welcome to The Storied Outdoors. My name is Brad Hill, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and pal, Bryan Gill, and we are, I cannot believe it, Bryan, we're wrapping up season 4 of this podcast. And this, my friend, is episode 50. Can you believe it?
50. Dude, if I had a laugh track or some kind of a clap background, I'd clap right now. Yeah, that is remarkable. You know, not for, you know,
I should have had it tuned. I should have had it been like,
yeah. It's not patting ourselves on the back, but just being able to find our people and have these guests on here that have really been great to get to know. We've been able to find our people in this community, you know, and it's when we started this thing out, we really didn't know where we were going to go with as far as what we were going to do. We had a good plan, but we didn't know how long it would be able to sustain. And we found some great people over the years. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and at this point, it's been a couple of years, but I think we had a great vision of what we wanted it to be, but no idea how long it would last.
Right.
And it's still growing. People are still finding out about it, and, you know, going back to the beginning and listening. I'm still always amazed. I tell people I'm amazed by the people willing to come on with us and join the podcast. And just when I think we're like getting to the end of our wish list of people to join us on the podcast, you know who you guys should talk to? You should talk to this guy or that guy, you know, or you meet somebody or you hear a new story. And so it's been such a fun adventure trying to find the stories that maybe someone's never heard of or wouldn't hear ordinarily. Right. We've been really fortunate. I mean, so fortunate to have some very sort of high profile people that everyone would know of, like, you know, whether it would be, you know, Patty Callahan Henry was really gracious to spend some time with us this season. And that was a wonderful conversation.
Yep.
But then we started the season off telling the story of our trip in October up to North Georgia, and we had Chase Bowers, my friend, our friend Chase Bowers, and Hugh Cheek and a few other guys were on this trip, and it was just a mess of a trip, it turned out, but it was quite a story and a lot of fun to tell that as we introed. So we have our own stories that we get to tell, but then we get to meet all these amazing people.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I'm looking at this list of guests that we had. And, you know, like you said, some of them are very well known, but then some of them are personal friends of ours that have incredible stories. You know, I think about, for me, Scott Goolsby and being at him winning the Broyles Award for Alabama as a top assistant coach in football in the state. And then Jamie and Morgan Snellgrove. I mean, I've gotten so many people say, "Oh my goodness, that story was so fascinating about them surviving that hurricane." You know,
I mean, who lives on a sailboat? I mean, the Snellgroves live on a sailboat. Those are the only people in my life, and I live in Mobile, for crying out loud. I live on the bay, just about it, and those are really the people that I know that live actually on a boat. So to hear that story was really cool. I mean, I think back to when we had Bart Valley on the podcast, and Bart works in the Coast Guard. That was a story no one had ever heard before. So I love finding. And oddly enough, both of those incredible stories involve hurricanes. Well, yeah. How about that?
I guess that's what comes with the territory of Mobile.
Yeah, hurricanes. But yeah, I love finding these stories that no one's, you know, likely not going to run into, but we get to like have them tell their stories, like Hugh. No one had heard Hugh's story.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people
from his perspective,
his wife's story, and her experience, but Hugh got to tell his story and share that with us. And man, we all grew from that story. Similarly, I think about John Hagedorn with Family Lines. They have an incredible ministry up in Washington State.
Yep.
And they got a wonderful video series that I've made use of doing men's ministry called Mending Lines. And even right now on Sunday nights, my guys are meeting, watching that video. And I'm watching that and I see him on the video and I think about the things that he had shared with us on that. But no one had ever really heard John's story. So to hear his experience of, losing his wife and, navigating all of that grief in those waters and then seeing the Lord bring into his life a new lady, and they are married and they're joining in ministry together, and what they're doing is really cool. And so to have that kind of experience and share that with people that, would never have encountered John otherwise outside of this podcast is really a lot of fun.
Yeah. And even stories that maybe you have heard or have read about, like I think of Wade Blevins, and his the Sam's One bug that his dad invented in the 80s, and the history of that lure, being able to hear it and hear him tell about it is a little bit different than reading about it in an article or reading about it online or something. But just to that story, it was really touching to me because my father went through some health issues. Your father went through some health issues. It got emotional there for just a little bit, just to kind of think about the impact of our dads in our life.
Certainly resonant with both of us and many others that listen in. It was great to talk to Ed Liddon, Pastor Ed. He's experienced a lot in his life, and he's experienced a lot lately. And I think he enjoyed really sharing about his passions when it comes to photography and fly fishing, and maybe people seeing a side of Ed Liddon that perhaps they had not seen or heard of before. And so I loved hearing those stories, and that was a personal favorite to be able to have him on as a guest as well this season.
Yeah, he was. That was a joy. He had it's so multi-dimensional as far as the levels that we kind of connect on, the story, the fishing, the hiking, the photography, all of those things, man. It's just a really cool guy. Andy Blanks coming in and just being able to talk like we were all hanging out around a campfire, and that's, we could have gone on for hours with Andy just because, not necessarily on one particular story, but just that, he's our people, and when we find our people, we can just connect well with them. And that was a lot of fun. And the things he's doing in men's ministry and the Strive app and the books that he's working on through Iron Hill Press, just a lot of great things going for men and men's ministry right there.
Personal favorite for me has to go back to, there are two in this season that are my favorites. And one was Dave Kakish, my friend Dave, who's a pastor out in Leavenworth, Washington. And I remember when all of this happened with him, he moves out there and, he goes on a walk or slash hike, and he ends up really significantly breaking his ankle and just that whole experience. And hearing him, he's such a good storyteller. And so hearing him share that experience and knowing him, and then also, what he learned from that was such a fun episode. And he's such a wealth of wisdom too. And so I just really enjoyed his sort of pastoral mentality of explaining and sharing. And man, he's one of those that I could sit and talk to for hours. But ultimately the probably my favorite top host or top guest that came on was Dr. Wes Stafford.
That was going to be my number one. Just
what a treat.
Oh my goodness, man. The way it was just a gentle spirit, it felt like I don't know, felt like I was talking to a legend, and just someone who loved the Lord for a long time, and just the adventures that he has. Yeah, he just has a wealth of stories to tell. And we only scratched the surface.
Oh my goodness, yes. Only the surface that we heard bits about his experience as a missionary kid growing up in West Africa. And then, he's got a lifetime of work with Compassion International of making literally a global impact for the kingdom, is what they have done. And he's helped build Compassion into one of the top nonprofits in the world, which is incredible. all the while he's filled with this unbelievable humility that's this infectious, I want to hang out with this guy, kind of, saint. I mean, when I think about, scripture calls us all saints, right? And these are the saints, but rarely do I feel like a saint, right? Even though scripture calls us those, but he certainly feels like this guy is one of the saints. This is great. That he'll be a part of that cloud of great witnesses. Like, man, if we were continuing to write scripture, he feels like a character that would have made it into, the story that God is telling, man. So it was really great to spend time with Wes.
Yeah. You and I wrote a couple of essays.
Only a couple this time. We didn't write as much this go around. It's getting harder. I'm going to be honest.
I'm right there with you. I was thinking I'm going to have some more adventures to find some more essays.
Yeah. No. See, episode 50. This is episode 50, and boy, we milked all of our good. We asked that question as our kind of one of our new favorite questions now, or at least mine in our conversations. If you're around a campfire, what's your favorite story to tell? And I've used up most of my good ones.
I know. I'm getting. I'm going to start being that. Like my dad when he got older, just repeating the same stories over and over again. Did I ever tell you about?
Oh, yes, you did. But tell it again.
Tell it again. I like it. I'll tell you where you got it wrong.
Yeah. You're like mouthing along with him.
Yeah.
I enjoyed yours, Bryan. I enjoyed reading Alone in the Dead Marshes. That was just a great reflection on that story, and the little breadcrumbs in there was I love that, bringing that alive and why that's there. That was a great one. I enjoyed reading it.
Well, I appreciate it. It was a fun one to write, but and retell, and like we said before, we're retelling these stories so that we don't forget them, but also for our children and for others to experience them. And it's nice to have it down and reflect on that. But man, your essay was, it covered a lot of ground.
That's a team effort too, Bryan. I really appreciate your help, because I was struggling.
Wow, man. It was, I felt like I was there. The way that you were, the imagery and everything was there. It was just, all I did was, man, just help structure it a little bit. But
yeah, I'm grateful for it.
Well, I love the talking about the refuge, and that's kind of where you met Dr. Stafford. And man, just
it was a great tie-in. It was a great tie-in to the season. Just spending time up there at the refuge in Wyoming, and a dream fishing trip. Out there catching some amazing fish, and one in particular amazing fish. Part of that story that I left out that I didn't tell is not long after that nice brown, I got by myself again without a net, and I caught a really nice rainbow trout in a hole that just absolutely mauled the hopper. Like, so the brown hits this rainbow dropper, this small little shiny nymph, and there were lots and lots of rocks as the river was coming down, and so I'd gone across them and found a couple of pretty good deep pools in this area, and was kind of below the rock and kind of flipped it up into this little pool. And man, this rainbow trout absolutely mauls that hopper. It was that one of those tan foam bodies, has like that little white like on the top of it,
like a chubby Chernobyl type.
Yep, that's it. And it had that kind of goldish brown wrapping on it. So it's perfect for October. And man, he just destroys it. And
is there anything better than seeing a trout hit a top water?
No. And there was something that you said, the way you described that one in one of the early essays. You talked about that trout that we caught on the Toccoa, the first trip, one of the birth of this podcast, that trip,
right,
where you caught that really, really big one. And I remember what a great picture that there is of you holding that thing up. But you said, and I thought about it when I saw this fish, you said that watermelon green, like this super deep watermelon green, and then that red watermelon inside on the side of this trout. It was the most vivid. I was so heartbroken that I couldn't get a picture of it to remember. It's certainly singed into my brain, and it was so beautiful. And I got a hand on it for a minute, but no net. again, no net, and he slipped out and into that hole, and there was obviously there was no getting him, but I got to see him for a second, hold him for a second. It was unbelievably beautiful.
I bet you'll never forget that the way it looked, though. I mean, I've not had a picture on a lot of the fish that I've either encountered or caught or missed or whatever. Man, you never forget them. Man.
So vivid. It was so different than the stock trout that you see. Like, I took some guys from church up to the Tuckasegee, and we fished this spring, not just a few weeks ago, and we had some snow come through. It was crazy. I'll probably end up writing about that because it was a ridiculous set of events that happened. But we caught some fish, and those trout look so stark different because they're those stock trout, and they're big and they're beautiful, and it was a lot of fun to catch them. But the color in them is so different than where we were in Wyoming. That was a very, very much a natural rainbow trout there, and it was spectacular. But I learned my lesson. You won't see me again without my net nearby. I don't care if I'm in the Bolton Branch catching brim or bass, or I'm in Wyoming trying to catch trout. There will be a net near my hand from this point forward.
Oh man, it doesn't take many to learn that lesson.
That's right.
Golly.
That Wes was awesome, man. So what a blessing to have had, to have that recorded and that experience kind of cemented and will live forever, and we can come back to it. I'm so thankful for this podcast for that very reason.
Yep. Well, after that, we, you talk about that trip to Gatlinburg, came on the heels of another trip that you and I took with our children.
Yeah. That string of weekends for me was really ridiculous because the last weekend in February, I took as my birthday weekend, and that's when you're talking about when we went up to Nakalula Falls there in Gadsden. And then the next weekend, I'm out in Utah with the college on our trip to travel out to Utah. We have these interfaith dialogues with LDS students. And then we got to go up to Logan and see some beautiful area. And then the very next weekend, literally back to back to back, I'm carrying these guys up to the mountains. So I got to see snow twice, but it all began, this run of trips began in Nakalula Falls. There's a great campground right next to it.
Yep.
And we had seen it before on a previous trip. Thought that'd be a really cool place. Drive up camping. You can walk right down to the creek there, or the little stream, which wasn't very small when we were there. It was,
again, the first time we were there, it was moving, and this time
monstrous. We had that slow motion backcast that Hank talks about, and I mean the waterfall was huge.
It was so big. So, but that story in itself is kind of a tale of two fishermen, if you will.
I want to throw in the third fisherman, which was this guy that I swear looked like Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
Fishing out there right beneath the waterfalls, and he was absolutely slaying them. I know I watched him catch 3-4 fish
right under the waterfall. I mean, he was casting into it basically. I was watching it. We were further down, so at the base of that waterfall, Brad had kind of worked up towards him. I had my son; he's 7 years old. My daughter, she's 5 years old, and Brad had his son there also. And so
Liam was there. We had them waders. We had both Charles and Liam had some waders.
Yep. And so Charles was using my 3-weight, and I gave him the Calico 3-weight. I think it's the Cahaba is the one that I have. And because I was thinking, you know what, a 3-weight is going to be good, but one that's built for bass may give him a little bit more backbone if he ever catch something. So I was like, I'll give him the Cahaba. Let's see what we can do with it. Well, we're fishing, and this guy that Brad's talking about catches a fish.
Mr. Miyagi.
I mean, he is. He's catching fish. He's got it in a net. He brings it over. He's showing all the kids. Charles is still fishing. He's got his waders. He's only up to about his knees. I'm on this little hill, like this boulder, with my daughter. We're trying to see if we can cast into this little stream. And Charles says, "I got one, Daddy. I got one." And I'm like, "No, you're probably hung. I've been up to this thing before. I've never caught a fish on this river in my life. I'm sure you're just hung." God. And that Cahaba rod is bent like a shepherd's hook, man. And I'm like, he really does have one. So I go over there and like the guy I'm still confused about this. So the guy lets the fish go right around where my son is fishing.
Right.
He's got a sore mouth. He literally just had a hook in his mouth. He lets the fish go. My son's fishing with a squirmy wormy and a little indicator on top. And he catches a trout. Is it the same trout? Is it?
No, either it was the same trout or it caused another one to fire up and hit it. But
that's
it.
One
of those two options, right?
That's it. It's either all I know is that my son caught a trout, and when I pulled it out of he set the hook. He was retrieving it with his left hand. I mean, he's doing all this stuff. I'm just like, there you go, buddy. You're getting it. You understand what you're doing. He's not horsing it. He's fighting it. I go over with the net. I'll net him. It's like a 15, 16-inch rainbow trout, and I'm just shocked. I've never caught a fish up there before. And
I still haven't.
Well, Brad, yeah, that's the second part of this. Charles is just, he's excited. I'm trying to get this fish, the lure out of his mouth, the fly out of his mouth, and without killing it and all this stuff. It was just chaos. Kids wanting to touch it, want to hold it, and all this stuff. I'm still shocked that there's even a fish on the end of the line. So we let it go. My daughter and I walk around this boulder, and we're fishing, I don't know, about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later. And in the same place where Brad and I were fishing with Steve and Rockerts about a year earlier, I'd gotten a bite, and I'd gotten him up to the net, and he got off. But I fished that same spot, squirmy wormy, and a little eddy that kind of was forming there. It goes under, the indicator goes under, and my daughter and I pull in another trout. It was probably about 13.
Nice fish.
Yeah, it was a nice one, 12, 13 inches long. But man, the fact that I'm still blown away that my son was able to pull in that fish, because that's
amazing.
It was fun. It was really neat. The whole series of events was fun, but on the flip side of that, as fun as our trip was, my son catching that fish, Brad had a difficult experience. Like I said, a tale of two fishermen there.
Yeah, man. We nothing. I caught nothing, and I was pretty dejected. But what really made it even worse was I was fishing, and then I let my rod came unseated.
Yeah.
Which means it's a 4-piece fly fishing rod.
A nice one.
Yeah. It's my nice one. It's my favorite one. My moonshine. This episode brought to you by Moonshine Rods.
Moonshine and Calico rods.
But it came unseated. So it came apart, and I see it just floating down the river.
Like, I'm looking at it going in front of me. Like, we're on a boulder there.
Yeah. Yeah, and the river it's not slow. I mean, it's really high. I guess there's been a lot of rain at this point, and it's very cold. And so I go after it, and ended up like getting water down in my waders, and it's very cold. I was pretty soaked and pretty sour at this point.
Well, and it was a cold day too.
Yeah, it was a cold. Liam's hands were, I think his lips were turning a little bit blue, and he'd gotten his gloves a little bit wet, and he got to the point where he wasn't super happy about being very cold.
Well, and then we go, we walk up, we go back up. My wife on that day, actually, she was running a race, one of these trail races that she does, a 50K at Mount Cheehaw. And
elevation on that run too.
Do what?
A little bit of elevation on that run.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's, she refuses to come on the podcast to talk about it, but that would be a fun conversation.
Amazing. She's amazing.
But we go up, when we go around the fire, thankfully, the Nakalula campground has a shower and everything. You were able to maybe get a little bit.
I got a little hot shower and thawed out. We did a little, we had our firewood and got the fire going. My older brother came to visit. That was a high point of of my trip is I got to see my older brother, who I don't get to see super often. He lives up in that area. So we got to visit with him. We cooked up some, we ate good.
Yeah, we did.
We cooked up on the, I love again, little shameless plug. We cooked on this. Brio is a company that makes this accessory to their fire pits that will also go into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So it has this ground stake, and you put it in the ground, and it holds this metal rod that then will hold your grill grate over your open fire. And so we got our fire going, and we grilled up some steak, and we ate pretty good that evening.
Yeah, had some really good conversation around the fire. It was a great night, but rain was in the forecast.
We were like, man, maybe it'll go around us.
Maybe it'll just blow on through, a light drizzle, It'll
be fine.
It'll be fine.
No. Oh, no. No. And I was, unfortunately, I have this REI half dome that I probably had for, I don't know, better part of 15, maybe 20 years. Yeah. I think I had it in college.
Yeah.
And it's set up, and I thought, with all this rain coming, I'm going to do, because you had done this. It was a great idea. We set up, as we set your tent up in your rain fly, you had the extra large Eno rain fly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, luckily I keep my lightweight rain fly, which is not quite as big as yours, but big enough to go over your hammock. I was like, I'm gonna put my rain fly over my tent to just kind of double up on the exterior shell of my tent. What I didn't account for was the base of my tent. Even though I had my ground tarp on and everything, I didn't account for that getting wet. And so, man, we bed down. I don't remember what time that was. It was fairly late. And I wake up somewhere in the ballpark of 1 a.m, and it's raining, and my feet are wet.
Oh.
In my sleeping bag.
In your sleeping bag.
And I can feel my feet wet. And I say, Liam, buddy, we got to get up. We got to get up. And so I frantically got us up, and everything that was still dry out and into our Subaru, where we spent the rest of the night in the Subaru while it poured. It was
a legit, what was it called? A toad strangler. Is that what it is?
Frog strangler.
Frog strangler.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was raining. And so, man, honestly, man, I was pretty down, and no fish, got soaking wet, and then got soaking wet again. My feet were wet, and all my stuff was wet. And so, man, I just packed up everything into this Rubbermaid thing that I had brought firewood in, and just all the wet stuff I just stuffed into that thing, man. And then we made our way over to Jack's to get some breakfast.
That was the best Jack's breakfast I'd ever had. We were all wet. Everything was wet. I think my stuff dried out in the basement for weeks. And
it certainly took a little while for everything to dry out and smell. But what's really funny, Bryan, is reflecting on that trip. We said earlier, we were talking about, and there's a phrase that you use that I remember hearing my buddy Dawson that works at our church. He's the guy that's coming on. He's our worship guy that's taking my place as worship pastor, and he's great. And he has this endearing term that I love that he calls it doom scrolling on your phone. And I think we start to doom scroll on our Instagram feed, and we see all of this wonderful stuff people are doing. And you and I, you got the same feed, so all these trout people are catching. Yep. And, here I am not catching. All I see is these people all catching and having these great times. And they're in these beautiful places, and the sun is shining and everything is dry. and that's the way it's supposed to be. Right. But that's not the case. That's
not always reality.
It's not reality at all. That's the one time in your life that everything looks great. Reality is, it's not, most of the time, it's not ever going to look like that. And so once I warm up to that and sort of not to be like, I don't want to expect the worst, but you might as well prepare yourself that it's probably not going to be perfect weather.
Right. Right. Yep.
And it certainly seemed like we as a group had a couple of, just bad experiences when we tried to plan this, these fishing trips. It's like every time here comes rain. Why is it got to rain? Why can't we get a dry trip? And so it just sort of piles up and you get really frustrated. I was really frustrated, and it really there was a handful of other things that had happened in life that really had me down. I mean, it was a struggle, and this was sort of the Kickstarter for that. But what's really funny, Bryan, is talking to Liam. We joked about it. I don't personally remember a whole lot about, whenever I was like 4 or 5. He's 8, and he doesn't remember the real bad stuff. I think he was oblivious to the fact that I woke him up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
He doesn't really remember that. He remembers the fun stuff that he did. He remembers, he still has this, there was all that bamboo growing right over there. And so he still has his walking cane, his bamboo cane. He remembers Charles and him and Charles having a big time. And he remembers the good stuff. So a lot of times I think we as parents maybe put pressure on ourselves to make sure that our kids have this awesome experience. And what they think is awesome and what we think is awesome a lot of times are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And he had a great time, and he thought it was incredible, and here I was, sourpuss over here in a bad mood because I wanted it to have to rain,
Right.
And I was exhausted on top of that, which doesn't help things, but he doesn't remember that. He remembers that was really fun.
Yeah. He went on a camping trip with his dad, that's what's going to stick out to him.
Yeah. And so just kind of constantly calling myself back to that, we want to have these. I like something that was said, that Andy said. He said, instead of stuff, we're having, these experiences, or these are memories, or these places that have gone instead of buying stuff. And I thought that was really good. We had this experience that he probably won't ever forget. And it was good. And, but it was tough, but obviously, like you said, it was redeemed for me on a fishing trip. Although I was pretty frustrated that the weather issue happened, and I may write about this and I may not, but I took some guys to Gatlinburg the next weekend after I got back from Utah, and Friday we're sitting around the fire. It's 60 degrees outside and it's perfect,
Yeah.
We wake up 5:30 the next morning because they said, weather was coming. We were prepared. We had our cold, for the most part, we were prepared. We had our cold weather stuff, and we wake up 5:30 the next morning. It's 16 degrees. There's already like 3 to 4 inches of snow on the ground.
Jeez. And you're going to fish.
Wade fish. We're not float fishing. We're wade fishing in the Tuckasegee River down near Bryson City. And
let me tell you, I've been in the Tuck before, and in the summertime, it's a cold river.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was. Yeah. I'm not going to share a whole lot about that story because I'm going to end up writing some more about that.
Yeah.
About that story.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty simple creatures, right? It doesn't take a whole lot to redeem a trip or to redeem a,
Now we did, it snowed and it was epic to say the least. And I was able to catch some fish. We were fishing hook, barbless, which makes it a little more challenging.
Yeah.
So I lost several fish that jumped out right in front of me, but I got to see them. But then I was able to net. See there, I had that net.
There you go.
I was able to net a few fish on that trip, and I did think about that rainbow that I caught out in Wyoming, just how vastly different coloring they were. They were really beautiful. But seeing the Smokies in the snow was, I'd never done that before. So we took the classic, the classic in front of the national park sign photo that you should always take, and it was snowy, and so that was pretty awesome.
Man,
but what a great season! Just as we're a great season.
That's just we bookend it with 2 different trips, and not everything goes right on either one of these trips. But it's just the fact of getting out there. Don't let the bad trips or the fear of a bad trip or the fear of imperfect weather keep you from doing something. Making these memories. If you have a child, go take your child fishing, take your child out in the outdoors. If you don't, get out there with some friends and make memories and think of, the things that we reflect the most on are a lot of times, those are the times when things don't go right. And those are the memories and the lessons we learn, either in our faith or in life. It's when the things actually don't go right. So just get out there.
Yeah, I know. Everybody always says that you don't tell the stories about the trip where everything went well. You always tell the stories about when everything went wrong.
Yep.
Although you don't really want to hear that when everything's going wrong.
No, that is not the time.
I would really like to be dry, and I would have liked to catch a fish. Just being honest.
Just be honest.
I'm really being honest.
Not too much to ask.
It doesn't even have to be a big fish.
Yeah.
So
hey, I'll settle for a brim.
Settle for a brim. The gateway drug is Wade Blevins calls it. I love that.
I was talking to Steven Rockets the other day, and he was saying how he has a few flies in his box that help to redeem a trip if he's not catching anything.
Yeah, I can always catch a brim.
Yeah. Well, we got a couple of things.
What a great list of folks, though, man. I mean, Wade and Andy and Wes. I mean, unbelievable group of people that we had. And looking forward, we got a great group coming up, and we've already
about halfway finished cranking them out for this season 5. Looking forward to a lot of those conversations, and that list just continues to grow. It's going to be a great season. Season 5 is going to be amazing, but we've got some things we're going to try to do this summer. That's going to kind of be almost like a mini season, not necessarily a season, but maybe just some additional content. That will be it won't be a full season for the summer, but there'll be a couple of additional episodes that are just sort of standalone episodes. I'm excited about a book reading group where we're reading a book, and a few guys that have been on the podcast will join us. Yep.
We'll all have read a book, and then we're going to sit down and discuss the little summer reading series.
That's it. And we got some guest bloggers that we're going to have on the website for some additional content. Been getting some of those in, and really, really good stuff. And I love having those additional voices, male and female. We got some really good ones coming. And then, I'm going on a few adventures. My wife, she wanted for her birthday this year to go hike the Appalachian Trail with some friends. I'm doing a bike ride in
do a section of
the section for 3 days. Yes, not the full thing by any stretch.
Wow, that is an adventure.
Just going to do the Appalachian in the weekend. Quick hike. But no,
just
my friend and I are going to go do a 40-mile bike ride in New York City. It's outdoors. It's going to be the concrete outdoors, but it's going to be fun. The 5 boroughs.
A great way to see the city.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I probably will ride on that one because my buddy Bill, who is riding with me, is a mentor of mine, and so I'm going to have some really good reflections on that. I'm taking my wife fly fishing for the first time. I'm going to get Craig with East Alabama Fly Fishing to take us on the Tallapoosa, and so that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So another way to do a little bit of an adventure right here in our own state.
Oh yeah, lots of that to be had, man. We talk about that all the time, man. There's so many great places to visit.
Yep.
We're shooting the Hill family. The Hill clan is looking at a solid summer vacation road trip action. So we're looking at trying to get out west somewhere, road trip style. Hopefully, Rocky Mountain National Park. And so
nice.
That's kind of the goal. We'll see if that comes together. And gas prices are so high you can see under them at the point. So. So that may make it more like a Disney trip than on the cheap trip, but we're working on that. And then I'm really excited for the fall, particularly for November. I'm really, really excited about going up to the Nuntutla with a group of guys and camping.
Yep, that'll be a good one to report on at that time. I can't wait. Well, guys, thank you all so much for joining us this season. Thank you for one
more thing, Brian. We talked about it in the intro. We mentioned it, but now we have everything together for this giveaway.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're working on that giveaway. So if you're a listener but you're not an Instagram follower, I would change that and make your way over to your Instagram if you do that kind of thing. And if you do, come follow us on Instagram. We're going to be doing a giveaway on Instagram with a few guest contributions and some friends of the show contributions to this kind of a big giveaway. Bryan, can you tell us a little bit about those?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. We were thinking we were going to do it at these milestones, 10,000 downloads. You guys blew past that. Then we wanted to do it at 12,000 downloads. You guys blew past that. So what we've kind of settled on is like this end of the season giveaway.
Yeah.
And so we can't keep up with you guys, y'all listening, and we really do appreciate it. But we've got a journal. It's called the Mark Twain Journal. It's through Growly Leather. It's unbelievable. It's a beautiful, genuine leather journal. We talk about writing your own stories in the storied outdoors. This is on brand for us. But what we did during this past season, we got a brand, and it's got the logo of the storied outdoors on it. And Brad's got it right there on the screen. If you're looking at the YouTube video, it's got a leather brand that is going to be on the actual journal. Beautiful journal. I'm really wanting to get one of my own.
Hard to give it away, isn't it?
I know, it's just sitting there on my desk at home, and I'm thinking, man, this maybe I could enter this contest. We also got some other stuff. Steven Rockers, one of our good buddies, he has tied up 5 or 6 Sam's One Bugs to give away.
Green and yellow Sam's One Bug.
Yeah, beautiful flies. And so Bryan, those are going to be.
You put in a book. You put in your book too, right?
I got a copy of my novel, The Devils in Alabama, is going to be in there. Emily Johnson, a former guest of the show, she's got a watercolor of a trout that she is just an incredible artist.
So talented, man.
Yeah, we've got some stickers. Stephen gave us some stickers for his fly fishing guide service. Emily's got some stickers of some trout. We got some stickers of the storied outdoors. Yeah, and so I mean, it is a great giveaway. I mean, we got a lot of things going on there. What we might end up doing, having the main prize, and then do a few sticker packages that we can give out to people too.
Second and third place sort of packages.
Yep. So details forthcoming on that after this episode airs. And so really looking forward to doing that and giving back to you guys, because y'all have been so kind to us.
So kind. I mean, we're up to 50 reviews on the old Apple podcast. I would really, really love to get some more reviews. So if you want to help us grow this podcast, that is the number one way. Take some time, write about your experience listening to the podcast. Leave us a rating and a review. That would just be such a blessing to us, as we're trying to share this story and these stories with as many people as possible. And that's one way that you're able to help us in that venture in growing the Storied Outdoors podcast, is leaving a review. And then the other wonderful way is really just sharing it. Yeah, sharing these podcasts. You can go on there and get the link for the podcast and say, hey, maybe there's somebody in your life that needs to hear, maybe it's the Snellgroves and their journey, or perhaps some of the stuff that Andy Blanks had to share in his episode. You can go in there, you can share that episode, you can grab that link and share, or you can just share the podcast itself with a friend. And that's one of the major way you can help grow this podcast. Bryan alluded to things on the blog post and book reviews and things like that. There's a lot of great extra content outside of just the podcast that we put on the website, thestoriedoutdoors.com. There are book reviews and all kinds of articles. There's pictures that perhaps go along with some of these adventures, and more links and more ways to find out about, say, Luke 5 Adventures, another great story that we shared this past season. Not heard of, an organization doing some really, really cool work, taking people hiking that are unable to go They have an incredible apparatus with there's someone on the front, someone on the back, and then there's this sort of mountain bike tire with a brake, and they're able to maneuver up, difficult trails for those who are disabled and unable to hike. So hearing from the group at Luke 5 Adventures was really cool. But there's more pictures, and there's also links and ways for you to perhaps partner with them and to see some of their work, and just more pictures. Bryan and I love photography. Mm-hmm. Ed Litton talked about some of the pictures that he had taken. And so you can go to his page on our webpage, listen to the episode, and also see some of those photographs that he talked about on the podcast that he shared with us. And incredible. I'm still blown away by the picture that he took of the night sky from the Grand Canyon, where you could see the Milky Way, and it was spectacular. So, and you can go there and see all of that. So check that out. The website, www.thestoriedoutdoors.com. And it's a really great way to interact with us. We love comments, and we'd love to hear from you. Maybe you would say, man, I would love to hear, so-and-so on your podcast. Maybe you have a recommendation. You can email us at thestoriedoutdoors@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And ultimately, man, we love doing this, and we're having so much fun hearing these stories, sharing these stories, having these conversations. And we really hope these things encourage you and challenge you to write your own stories and share your own adventures in what we love to call the storied outdoors.